Imagine a creature bigger than a building, longer than 3 school buses, and heavier than 9 fully grown African elephants. No, it's not a scene from a fantasy movie. It's reality in the late Cretaceous period of the Mesozoic era. Among these titans roamed some of the most impressive species of dinosaurs, including Argentinosaurus, Patagodoton, and Andysaurus. These giants were among the largest animals that ever existed on our planet. But here's the twist. Despite their colossal size, these dinosaurs had brains that were relatively tiny, like seriously small. For instance, the Patagodoton, which was around 37 meters long and weighed roughly 69 tons, had a brain that was just around 82 cubic centimeters. That's about the size of 2 ping-pong balls. So why would evolution produce such big-bodied, small-brained dinosaurs? Is it possible for a dino to be massive yet mentally unsharp? Let's dive into the incredible world of paleontology to find out. Hey there, and welcome back to Dinosaur Planet. Today we're tackling a real head-scratcher. We'll explore the curious case of giant dinosaurs with their surprisingly small noggins. Ever wonder why some of the largest dinosaurs had relatively tiny brains? Join us as we uncover the secrets behind their encephalization. To truly understand why these gentle giants sported smallish brains, we need to first understand how we measure brain size in dinosaurs. You can't exactly ask them to take an IQ test or measure their cranial capacity with a pair of calipers. Nope, not possible when you're dealing with fossils. So scientists turn to a handy metric called the encephalization quotient, or EQ. The EQ is calculated by dividing the actual brain size of a species by the predicted brain size based on its body mass. By comparing the results to other animals, researchers can determine whether the dinosaur had a relatively large or small brain. As for the sauropods, the group that includes the Argentinosaurus, the Brachiosaurus, and the Diplodocus, their EQs are consistently low. For example, the massive Argentinosaurus, which lived in what is now South America around 97 million years ago, had an estimated EQ of just 1.1. That means its brain was only about 10% larger than expected for an animal of its size. In contrast, humans have an EQ of around 7, which is pretty high compared to other animals. Even dogs, which are considered to be highly intelligent, have an EQ of around 1. So the sauropod's brain was much smaller in relation to its body size than even a dog's. Okay, so now you're probably wondering, what's the deal with these small-brained giants? Why didn't evolution just give them bigger brains? Well, it turns out that there are benefits to having a small brain as well as risks. One major benefit of a small brain is that it requires less energy to run. Brains are metabolically expensive organs, consuming up to 20% of the body's energy, even in non-human animals. So reducing brain size is a good strategy if you're trying to conserve energy. Sauropods were herbivores, which means they ate plants to get their energy. Plants, however, don't have a lot of calories per unit of mass compared to meat, so sauropods needed to eat huge amounts of food to fuel their massive bodies. By reducing their brain size, they could allocate more of their energy towards growth and reproduction instead. In fact, research suggests that the trend toward smaller brains in sauropods was driven by sexual selection. Male sauropods with larger bodies were more successful at attracting mates and passing on their genes. This led to a feedback loop where larger bodies and smaller brains became more common over time. Now you may be thinking, wait a minute, if these dinosaurs were so unintelligent, how did they even survive? After all, being a giant has its drawbacks. And I hear you. That's a great question. Being bigger does come with challenges, especially when you're in a world full of hungry predators. But don't underestimate the power of being a sauropod. Their long necks and tails gave them a huge advantage when it came to finding food and keeping predators at bay. For example, the long neck allowed them to reach high plants that no other herbivore could access, and their whip-like tails could be used to defend against predators or to attract mates. Plus, being big isn't always a bad thing. A large body size provides more opportunities for adaptation and flexibility in different environments. For example, sauropods were able to maintain a stable body temperature in both hot and cold climates thanks to their gigantism. They also had a slower metabolism, which made them less vulnerable to environmental changes. And let's not forget the sheer diversity of sauropods. With over 150 species identified, They clearly found ways to adapt and thrive in various ecosystems around the world. Despite the advantages of being a giant, though, there still may have been some downsides. Sauropods were incredibly heavy, which made them slow-moving. They weren't built for speed. Being big and slow is not usually a winning combination in the wild. But sauropods were up to the task. Their massive size provided protection against many predators. And those predators that were big enough to target them had to be very careful. One wrong move, and they could easily break a bone or get tangled in the tail. Take the Giganotosaurus, a gigantic carnivore that lived alongside the Argentinosaurus. This predator was around 13 meters long and weighed almost 7 tons. It was one of the largest meat-eaters in the world, but it still had to be cautious when hunting sauropods. Getting close enough to deliver a fatal bite without getting injured itself was a challenge. The sheer bulk of the sauropod made it difficult to bring down, and the long neck and tail could cause serious damage if the Gigantosaurus wasn't careful. So while being a giant dinosaur wasn't necessarily a disadvantage when it came to surviving, it's important to remember that intelligence isn't everything. Sometimes being big, slow, and simple was the ultimate strategy for success. The sauropods prove that it's possible to be a massive creature with a tiny brain and still thrive. It challenges our perception of what it means to be smart and successful in the natural world. Maybe being super intelligent isn't the only path to success. Maybe sometimes it's better to focus on other things like growing really, really big. Who knows? Maybe they had other things to worry about. You know, growing to enormous proportions comes with its own set of challenges. These dinosaurs were basically walking skyscrapers. Just imagine the logistics of growing that much tissue, the amount of protein synthesis required, the extra care needed during cell division to ensure everything scales properly. And don't forget about the added strain on their bones, their muscles, their cardiovascular system. Being a giant isn't all sunshine and roses. It's like trying to operate a heavy machinery. You need the right tools and the right maintenance to keep everything running smoothly. Maybe some of these giant dinosaurs had relatively small brains because they had to devote a significant amount of their mental resources to just keeping their bodies upright and functioning. In a way, their brains had to stay small just to keep up with the demands of being supersized. It's like trying to multitask while already at maximum capacity. Not impossible, but not easy either. So maybe being a giant dinosaur wasn't just about being big. Maybe it was also about being smart enough to manage the challenges of being big. So why did the biggest dinosaurs have such small brains? Because being big, slow, and simple worked really well for them. They didn't need to outsmart predators or solve complex problems. Their sheer size protected them, and their small brains were an evolutionary advantage. It shows that intelligence isn't everything. Sometimes it's better to be big, dumb, and safe than little, smart, and vulnerable. So there you have it, folks. The secret behind the small brains of giant dinosaurs. From the Argentinosaurus to the Brachiosaurus, these gentle giants roamed our planet for over 100 million years. They taught us that sometimes being big, slow, and simple is the ultimate strategy for success. Their story challenges our perception of what it means to be smart and successful in the natural world. And hey, it's not all about being super intelligent. Sometimes being a massive herbivore with a tiny brain is the way to go. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments which dinosaur fact you want us to explore next. Until then, keep thinking big and keep your brain engaged. It's the smart thing to do.